Good afternoon once again. And my name is Mwendwa Kivuva from KICTANet. And thanks for joining this webinar. And this webinar is to sensitize the community on the work that Kenya does on the WTDC process, that is World Telecommunication Development Conference, which is usually under the process is under ITU, is an ITU process. So we want to understand the process Kenya has gone through to prepare for the event and what are the priorities for Kenya for that event. This year, the government of Azerbaijan will host the World Telecommunication Development Conference in Baku on 17th to 28th of November this year. And the conference presents an opportunity for countries and regions in the world to articulate their development needs and shape global digital agenda and align their effort with the Sustainable Development Goals. As usual, KICTANet is a convener is a multi-stakeholder convener, and we convene different stakeholders, may they be government or also civil society, and also academia and technical community to understand different aspects. So we provide a platform for them to be able to come together and speak to the community. And this event, we are more aimed at CSOs, being able to bring CSOs on board, a civil society organization, to be able to understand the process and to be able to contribute with that process. And with us, we have Communications Authority of Kenya, who will guide us through the process. Of course, we have a program, and the program will have a CA representative who will welcome the guests, and then they'll give us the key mandate of the World Telecommunication Development Conference that is ongoing and how ITU works, and then the different chairs and vice chairs of the different working groups. They will explain to us what working groups are and the different working groups they work. So we have three working groups, and the different chairs of those working groups will speak to us. And then at the end of the day, we will have a Q&A where we will be able to ask questions to CA. So with that in mind, I want to call the CA team to be able to speak to us, and I think Purity or Fred will take over from here. Hey, Purity or Fred, you can take over.
Yes, good afternoon. You can hear me, Kivuva?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you so much. Everyone, my name is Purity Ndwiga. I work at the Communications Authority of Kenya in the Corporate Communications Division. And we are very happy to have the KICTANet team on board, having convened this meeting. Mine is very short to welcome you and say we are glad that we are able to have this conversation and deliberations this afternoon. We hope it will not, it will just be a short, succinct program to be able to bring you up to speed with the preparations towards the WTDC event scheduled for Baku in November. So basically mine is just to say welcome, and that as CA, we are the designated agency, Kenya, or rather government representative to the ITU. And therefore, we take part in all the workings or the activities of the ITU, one of them being the WTDC that deals with issues of development and all that. So as CA, we have had a preparatory committee that has been discussing the positions of what Kenya and eventually Africa common proposals would be in preparation for attending the WTDC. And this preparatory committee has worked in 3 working groups, which has its vice chairs. There's Dominic Oko, there is Dr. Emma Otieno, and there's Crispin Ogongo, who will probably say one or two things a little later. But of course, overall, the chair of this preparatory committee is Fred Ongaro, who's the Deputy Director of Fund Strategy here at the authority. And therefore, without much ado, I would like to welcome Fred to just give his chairman's remarks and progress us with the presentation. Thank you and welcome, Fred.
Thank you, Purity, and thank you, Kibuba and team and the entire fraternity of KICTANet. I don't know whether I'm able to share the presentation from this side.
Yes, you can be able to share. Yeah.
Okay. Second, allow me a second to do that. Okay.
Yeah, we
can
can
see my slides.
Yeah, we can see it. Huh?
Yes. Apologies. Just to say it's a pleasure meeting the entire team today, so that we are able to sensitize and take note of the progress that has been made in the whole process of preparation for WTDC. So as in Purity indicated, we have a team of we have an internal committee, or rather that is been guiding the process from the Kenyan perspective. So the presentation today will cover generally the overview of ITU for the benefit of those who have not probably interacted with ITU before, the role and mandate of the World Telecommunication Development Council, and finally to the core mandate of this meeting, which is planning process for WTDC 2025 and Africa's priority areas. Just to note that ITU is one of the oldest UN agencies, basically responsible for ICTs. It was established in 1865 with a membership of 193 member states, along, of course, with several other private sector and academia and other organizations. I want to believe that KICTANet is also a sector member, and therefore part and parcel of the structure of ITU. Apologies, my screen is misbehaving. So the ITU has three sectors, and basically that is the basic functions, or rather the mandate of ITU. The first sector is the radio communication sector, which basically manages the spectrum and satellite orbits. The second sector is the ITU-T standardization sector that sets standards that, of course, facilitate interconnectivity and communication across the globe. The third sector is the development sector, where actually WTDC conference is housed, that then has a mandate of promoting equitable access to ICTs, generally the digital transformation agenda and development and bringing, of course, closing the gap. So overall, under ITU, the largest or the highest organ that makes decisions on how ITU operates as an institution is the Plenipotentiary Conference. This is held every 4 years. The last one was actually held in Romania, I think around 2 years ago, if I'm not wrong. So regarding WTDC itself, that is the World Telecommunication Development Conference. This conference is normally held every 4 years, and I said, as I indicated, is actually housed under the development sector, that's the BDT sector, and brings it's an opportunity, as Kibuba indicated, for stakeholders to come together. First, take stock of what has been achieved in the past, set priorities for the future, as well as identify any programs. Actually, the membership of ITU normally donate some funds to a kitty and seek for partnership to facilitate provision of ICT infrastructure and services across the globe, more especially in marginalized areas and special groups, that is persons with disability, women, elderly, and others. And of course, it is a platform for us to align that partnership arrangement with other partners on that scale. So WTDC as a conference in the development sector has 5 key outputs. So first, there is a declaration, which is more of a political statement, a commitment that sets out, of course, the high vision on ICT development across the globe. So this is mostly like a 3-page document that highlights the focus for the sector in the next 4 years. Then there is the action plan, which now concretizes the specific actions, identifies, of course, projects that are tailored to the regional needs. And closely related to that is the regional initiatives. So every region, and Africa being one of the regions, we have actually around 7 regions across the globe under ITU. Our region has also, the regions identify their priorities. For example, in developing countries, you can say our priorities in infrastructure, our priorities in support for cybersecurity. You identify your priorities as a region. That then is the pressing need that the ITU could support, facilitate. And the other output is the resolutions. Basically, resolutions are like, for lack of a better word, the laws or rather guidelines that then facilitate the actions of the sector in the next few years. They set the policy directions, of course, they foster cooperation. For example, if our focus area as a country will be cybersecurity, then the resolutions will actually outline how you can partner with other governments to be able to come at par or protect yourself from the cybersecurity threats and others. And of course, they reflect the commitments. For example, if the focus is to help the elder and the persons with disabilities, that becomes a commitment within the membership, because it's a consensus document for them to prioritize that particular commitment for implementation. And finally, we have the study group questions. So under the development sector, we have 2 study groups, that is study group 1 and 2. And those 2 study groups normally are given a mandate every 4 years, which is reviewed depending, of course, on the priorities of the union for the next 5 years. So during this period, WTDC reviews the mandate of the different questions. It can collapse study groups, it can create questions, expand the scope of some specific questions. Of course, it can also review and indicate that certain questions are not relevant anymore. They are not. We don't have a need to actually have more studies on the same. So it's an opportunity for us to identify what then needs to be studied more, to come up with recommendations on how best the action items can be achieved. So key timelines. WTDC process, I indicated, is it happens every 4 years. So for this particular WTDC 2025 that is scheduled for November, the planning phase is started in around February, where every region actually holds what we refer as a regional preparatory meeting. If you remember, in Nairobi, sometimes, I think a few months ago, we did hold the first African preparatory meeting for WTDC. And I think I'll give you an highlight of the different meetings that the African region has undertaken. So the different regions normally hold those particular meetings. And then after those meetings, as you can see here on 29th of September, we first had our interregional meeting. Where then we consolidate or rather be able to review what other regions are actually doing. And if your interest is on a particular subject, then you could see which other regions also interested in that, and then be able to align. And that ensures that you increase the probability of that proposal going through during the consensus building during the conference itself. So we have already held the first two interregional meetings. And what we actually are waiting for as going forward, the last one was actually held in 29th of September. Now we are in the last stages as we head to WTDC in November, that's 17th to 28th. And just to note that a day prior to the conference, we'll have a global youth celebration center, and the youth of this country, of course, are encouraged to attend and participate. The options are available, physical and virtual. Just to reiterate that the African preparatory meetings have been held 3 times. The first one was held in February in Nairobi, where we actually adopted the agreed process on how to develop and come up with African common proposals. We actually had a very basic draft then. The second preparatory meeting was held in Namibia, where it considered actually country contributions and agreed main priorities, which were basically draft priorities. And the third meeting was recently held in August in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, which then fine-tuned African common proposals. So as we speak, the Kenyan proposals, or rather input to the WTDC process, have already been adopted. And now what we have is the African common proposals. You could tell in an environment where you have so many interests and of course countries with different needs, priorities change. What could be a priority to you today may not be a priority to the other person. But then we normally reach a consensus for the better of our continent. And what we have, what I'm going to show you is the outcome of that particular process. Of importance is actually the African regional initiatives. What are the priorities for the African continent? So this is what has already been agreed. So we have 5 regional initiatives. The first one is on resilient infrastructure and meaningful connectivity for sustainable development, including emergency telecommunications and multi-hazard early warning systems in Africa. In the sector, if you've been a bit keen, you could see that we even held a workshop with ITU recently on the early warning systems. Actually, that is an initiative that had early on kicked off, but then of course is part of the priorities for the continent this period. So on this particular one, our focus is on expanding access, that is deploying infrastructure. The second one is on making it more meaningful, meaning that we need digital skills, we need relevant record content, we need to work on our policy, harmonize our policy regulatory frameworks for interregional connectivity, even between countries, work on sustainability of some of the infrastructures we're actually putting up, including the startups and for long-term digital development, more especially in areas that are not economically viable. And more importantly, of course, establish disaster management networks that can be able to detect and be able to inform the decision makers in time to actually be proactive in the environmental activities. The second strategic initiative is on developing an inclusive, trustworthy AI ecosystem in Africa for socio-economic development. AI is a big deal, more especially for a continent like ours with a young generation, and the usage and the need for security, the need for enhancing the regulatory framework to protect the users, as well as, of course, to reap the benefits of AI in general. So that has been identified as the second one. So we're looking at the governance problems there, the risk and how we can manage those kind of risks, the need for capacity building on AI, the need to support in incubation centers and those centers that actually support innovation and research, and more importantly, on how to share knowledge among in the global era, so that we can be able to make maximum benefit from the AI ecosystem. The third is building trust, safety, security, and use of the telecommunication, the ICTs, and data protection and privacy. So Africa would like to be supported to harmonize the legal and regulatory framework across the region. You realize that communication in our country, we can actually affect even the stability of another country within, and how we treat security within an interconnected environment like ours. Then there's need for that partnership and collaboration. So Africa would like, of course, to be supported on awareness, promoting cybersecurity hygiene, on capacity building, more especially on the cyber incident response teams, protection on critical infrastructure. I'm glad that we already have a critical infrastructure framework in place, and of course in developing standards around research and development, and more especially on safeguarding our children's online. The fourth one is on digital infrastructure applications, SME development and emerging technologies, and the innovation ecosystem. So what we intend to achieve under this particular African initiative is to develop frameworks for innovation and SMEs. We need to have an innovation structure where we can have acceleration centers that can help support development of this application and specific technologies that can actually solve the current problems we face. More especially in Kenya, we are an agricultural country. How then do we actually develop solutions in agriculture, develop solutions to improve our health system, education system, and others? So if you realize the key result areas are more around policy, around innovation, around capacity building, and basically how to partner with other regions in order to leverage and of course take into account the best practices to enable us progress at a better rate. Finally, we have sustainable funding mechanisms for Africa's digital transformation. Cost of capital around the continent is one of the major hindrances for deployment of infrastructure and even supporting innovative ideas and the all ecosystem on financing is actually an issue. So we wanted the ITU as a union to be a platform where we can have this dialogue, where we can be able to identify the relevant partners, where we can be able to harmonize how then we relate, more especially when we are developing specialized funds like Universal Service Fund in our country and other special funds that are actually provided by government. And more importantly, how do we track progress, share lessons learned, and such kind of environments. So those are the 5 regional initiatives. I think if you will allow, I'll finish the presentation, give my colleagues a chance to add, then we can have members to ask questions.
Thank you.
So, yes, I hope you can hear me. So from the regional initiatives, like an example I could give is that from the previous regional initiatives in the last period of WTDC, before the last WTDC, it identified some specific initiatives. Out of these initiatives, you actually develop projects. And out of these projects, then the donors and other governments across the union can then be able to actually support. So you realize that there is limitation of funds and the identification of when, for example, when Africa identifies early warning for all as a priority, it depends on another government or donor who actually aligned specifically to that item, who can then support, of course, that initiative through ITU. So some of the fundings that have come in and the benefits that we have received across the continent is as indicated in this one. So early warnings to system, early warning for all. You can see the kind of countries that have benefited. African broadband mapping, Kenya is one of the beneficiaries. There is GovStock, where also Kenya is one of the beneficiaries. The ITU Academy, actually Kenya has marked as a center of excellence, so we receive some funds to that effect. ITU guidelines for national emergency telecommunications. Kenya is not a beneficiary specifically, but on innovation acceleration centers. This is actually one of our priorities. Now that we are, one of the agenda items for the government is deploying 1450 digital hubs across the continent. So our benefit from ITU is actually getting an innovation acceleration center, which is more of a high-level advanced skilling on ICT that then can boost the skill set in our country and the region and others. So this is just but an example of some of the projects, the initiatives that actually end up being projects and funded by ITU membership, including the ITU budget itself. So Kenya has also gained from the GIGA projects. There's some schools and under connection. There is ITU FCDO collaboration. Different government agencies are working with the FCDO on capacity building, development of frameworks and others. And the African Girls Can Code. This is another program that I see Kenya is earmarked for to benefit. So the second deliverable is actually on resolutions. As I indicated, these are guidelines on how the BDT sector, of course, ITU has resolutions across on how they actually operate. So for example, if I can take you to one of the resolutions, for example, resolution 11, you have it under 2 here, is a resolution on telecommunications, ICT services in rural, isolated, and poorly served areas. So this resolution already identifies what are the basic priorities, or rather the focus of BDT. It's actually a directive to BDT as a sector and a commitment by governments to foster connectivity in rural, isolated, and poorly marginalized areas. So it gives guidelines on how the same is supposed to actually be undertaken. So since these resolutions already, some of them actually exist. So the option membership have is either to modify the resolution. That means you want to add something, want to delete a text that you feel is not bringing out the context or what you need to do. And then we, of course, do it in track changes. That happens within the countries. Then you can have an option of adding a new item under the same if you feel that an aspect that is very critical under that is not covered. Sometimes you can suppress an existing resolution, part of a resolution, even in the entire resolution, by proposing to transfer the text elsewhere. Your feeling is that that text is probably not even fit in that particular resolution, or it does not augur well with the current environment or how the general direction of the sector. So those are the options we have. So those options were available prior to the African Preparatory Meeting. So during that process, countries were able to edit. But what I could note is that the last WTDC recently took in Kigali, it actually comprehensively reviewed a majority of the resolutions. So they still reflect the current priorities as we go. So quite a few editorial changes have actually been made. Just to take you through, we had 20 existing resolutions were under review from the African context. And of course, we had 5 new resolutions that have been introduced by the African region. So on this particular table, I'll take you through some of the resolutions that then we are well aligned as a country that are very key in as we close the digital gap in our country. Resolution 2 is on study groups. So this was updated. Some questions were revised and terms of reference provided to study questions for new study areas. I think the details we can provide the details later. On resolution 11, which I just indicated, there was the resolution was actually enhanced to address barriers to connectivity, including issues with spectrum sharing and encouraging inclusive policies and renewable energy. So resolution 17 is on resource mobilization and cooperation on approved regional initiatives and sustainability projects. So what we indicated that Africa, ITU has regional offices which actually run projects. So this resolution was geared towards improving how then we mobilize resources, how we bring partners together to be able to fund the identified regional initiatives, sort of advocacy for the funding process. Resolution 23 is on internet access and availability for developing countries and improving affordability of internet-enabled devices. So this was actually, the scope was actually expanded. Some text was added around physical measures on sharing of business models. So the sector BDT director was also guided on how to facilitate trainings and workshops to ensure that there is stronger collaboration among the stakeholders. In resolution 34, that is on disaster preparedness. This was also enhanced to tackle the climate challenges that we face, and more directly on how we can leverage on AI to be able to solve the problems we face. Resolution 37 is on bridging the digital divide. It was actually enhanced also to look more on the demand side. We have actually been focusing more on infrastructure, but demand side, what is the affordability issues? What skill set do we require? Even the basic digital scaling. What are the security problems we actually encounter, and how the same then can be resolved? So there are quite a number of them. You can have, we will share later on a link to the different resolutions that are available and are relevant, that we see are of importance to our environment. Just to take you through of interest is the new resolutions that have actually been introduced. The first one is assisting developing countries and low development countries, and in establishing harmonized frameworks for policy and market regulation and adoption of space-based technologies. You realize in the environment where we have right now is that of course, we have the terrestrial infrastructure in place, but satellite is playing an important role, more especially in terms of emergency communication, as well as providing the relevant backhaul for our networks. But then regulation or policies around how you manage satellite has been a challenge, more especially in low-income countries like ours and the region, where you can set guidelines on how they can partner with the local community, but then they might actually even frankly ignore you. So there is need for us to have a harmonized approach. So what the request here, or rather the resolution, is about having a harmonized approach on how to regulate and work with these particular partners. And over and above that, how the ITU can help in capacity building and in coordinating spectrum in this space, and especially how then we can leverage on the universal service funds across the continent to be able to provide the connectivity to areas that are probably not being reached by the terrestrial networks. The second new resolutions on digital transformation for smart villages and communities. You could say that as a country, we are already ahead in the fact that we have a candid concept, and we have impact on the implementation of the digital hubs project across the continent. This is a similar format, but then at the village and communities level. The other one is on strengthening the role of regional offices. We have regional offices for ITU. What they needed to do is expand that role to ensure that then they respond well to the issues that we have on the ground, more especially the numbers, the resources that they actually require to support the member countries where they actually operate. So just to note that other regions, just like the African region, is also in the process of reviewing their own resolutions. And it is our role as the African group, including the membership here, to pay attention to what the other regions are doing and see how we can initiate an engagement with them and align our strategic direction, so that during the WTDC process, then we are able to achieve our vision on specifically our priorities. As I said, it's a consensus building environment. So you don't go with a fixed mind. You can go with three modifications and actually achieve two. But then it is give and take in that kind of environment. Just as indicated by Kivuva, the ITU Council in 2024, of course, made a decision that the next conference is going to be held in Baku, Azerbaijan, from 17 to 28th. And the theme is universal, meaningful, and affordable connectivity for an inclusive and sustainable digital future. That is a summary of our presentation. If you allow me, I can give my colleagues a chance to speak. This was an overall presentation that captures the different working groups, but they could make a short presentation or a comment or two. Dominic Oko, the chair for Working Group 1.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, we
Yeah,
can hear you.
so of course, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You can continue now.
All right. Yeah, so thank you and good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Dominic Oko, and I was in the Working Group 1. Working Group 1 handles thematic priorities and regional initiatives. And specifically myself, I was in the subcommittee or sub-working group of strategic and operational plans. So Fred has captured quite a bit on what the role of the working group was, because it was to develop the thematic priorities, and subsequent to that, then you come up with the regional initiatives. So I'll just add on slightly, maybe things maybe you could note. One of them is on the issue of what then regional initiatives are, possibly the projects and even the funding. So as Fred mentioned, the Africa region has already agreed on 5 regional initiatives. So the regional initiatives by themselves, they're the high-level priorities. If you read through, say, from priority 1 to 5, you'll clearly see that it's more or less the bigger picture. That's the framework, basically, that is agreed at WTDC. Then the ITU projects now. These now are the how to achieve that. So they are the practical on-the-ground activities that now get to deliver those initiatives. So again, that means that after the regional initiatives are identified, then you now go to the next step, which will be now to develop projects. The other issue here is about funding. Regional initiatives by themselves do not come with guaranteed funding. And that's the reason why, again, as the chair was presenting, one of the last things he mentioned was about resource mobilization. So with this now, we have a framework to mobilize resources. So the actual money comes through extra budgetary contributions. That's the ITU. In ITU, they have the funding, but in the event that there are any extra funds, and usually these will come, of course, with their own conditions from the bilateral partners, then maybe funds can be put aside. In fact, that's one of the reasons why some of the projects get delayed, because of course, one of the things that we do as we start off is to review the previous projects which were implemented. That's during the WTDC-22, and you'll find some are ongoing, others of course, have not been completed, because each will come its own issues of funding and even other project-related issues. The other major source would be then come to from Partner to Connect. These are pledges that countries make, or even organizations do make, on how to fund the projects. Then we also do through, say, bilateral funding. So it's just to stress that regional initiatives, they are more or less the vision. Of course, the ITU projects are the funded, now becomes now the real activities. But there's a lot of work which needs to be done with regards to establishing some sustainable funding model to enable the initiatives to be achieved. I think that's what I have to say briefly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dominic. We have a chair working group 2, Dr. Emma Tieno.
Thank you very much, and thank you, the members of KICTANet, for giving us this opportunity. I don't know how much time we have, but I would have liked to maybe just share my screen and project one or two things just to create a better understanding. I don't know, you're able to see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Fine. Okay, so I would have just loved to zero in on one or two things to relate and pick up from what Fred and my colleagues Fred and Dominic have said. And you've seen one of the things that the World Telecommunication Development Conference is charged with is to look at the work of what the ITU calls study groups. And study groups is a very interesting component of this whole process. And it's something that the KICTANet can actually immediately start looking at and post the WTDC. It is one of the areas where KICTANet can start contributing to actively so that it becomes also a point of your contribution to this going forward. Because as you've been told, ITU is actually constituted of the membership of the whole world, basically. So when you want your voice heard, the best way is to actually come through platforms like this. So in study groups, if I would just say in summary, they're established by the conference as the WTDC, and it's actually well anchored into the convention of the ITU Article 17. And it is actually study groups deal with specific oriented task-oriented telecommunications questions of priority, mostly relating to developing countries. The D sector mostly deals with matters for developing countries, landlocked and small islands, mostly the marginalized parts of the world, taking into consideration the ITU strategic plan, the goals, and other outputs. Then, after looking at these things, because they are it's like an implementing arm, which then reports to various organs. One of these is an organ which you need to pay attention to called Telecommunications Development Advisory Group. And then, of course, from there, the recommendations go to the WTDC. So the linkage between the study groups and the WTDC is that the WTDC forms study groups. They're the ones that actually decides how the study group is going to work in the next cycle, the next 4 years. Then the study groups will take the work out of the outcomes of the WTDC, look at them mostly in forms of studies, the way Fred had explained, and then they'll make recommendations back to WTDC. And these recommendations get into the whole wheel of implementation. So I've just explained a little bit and like how they're formed. They have chairpersons and they work with rapporteurs. The composition of study groups is actually member countries. ITU actually has 194 member countries. The 94th one is Palestine, which is, of course, not recognized in the UN yet, but it's an observer member. So it's in the ITU. And then we have the sector members, the associate members of the academia. So this is a place where everybody is practically involved and your voice can be heard through these study groups. Of course, there's a resolution that actually guides the study group, and I would encourage everybody here. There's an available report for the last WTDC, the Kigali 2022, that when you have a look, you're going to get all these things that you're talking about into a proper frame, because that report captures everything that we've talked about here from the past now going to the forward. Then the next thing that I would like to talk about is just maybe this slide, because it is I can sense, it's a lot of information and people are wondering what is a study group, what is a resolution, so basically when you look at it in one page is that the ITU will have the strategic plan, which Dominic has explained in brief. But for you to implement the strategic plan, it comes with those things that Fred talked about in terms of priorities, initiatives, resolutions, which are then broken down. They must be implemented and reported into activities. And one of the activities is forming the study groups to look at the goals so that they can work on them and then report through recommendations. So in summary, that is a linkage between the whole picture and the works of the study group. I have mentioned that the study groups are approved by the World Telecommunication Development Conference. So the general concept is there, and there is a resolution which number 2 of the WTDC, which guides the formulation. However, the study groups will change in form cycle by cycle based on what members decide. So just as the resolutions that Fred has presented about, that the regions have had a chance to look at and align them to the current situations, priorities, and all this. So also study groups go through the same process. Regions are required, countries and regions are required to sit down, look at the study group that has been formulated from the last conference and confirm, is it working for us or is it not working for us? So if it is not working for us or it needs to be enhanced, the countries through the regions will actually sit and prepare amendments to the terms of references of the study groups, and also have a discussion in terms of like, how many study groups do we want to have in the following cycle of the 4 years to assist us to be able to deliver on the priority matters. So these study groups are implementers, and they are linked to what Fred has talked about, the priorities, initiatives, resolutions, and what Dominic has talked about. So for the 2022 conference, it was agreed that we shall have 2 study groups, that is study group 1 and study group 2. Why I'm showing this screen is that so that members can just appreciate. So for the study group 1, members sat down and said that we are agreeing they shall look at 7 areas, which are listed on this screen. I don't have to read for purposes of time. So study group 1 looks at 7 questions. Looking at 7 questions means that the members will be appointed to these study groups, as I pointed out the previous slide, a chairperson for this study group, rapporteurs for each question, and members who then develop their specific terms of references, and then they meet, guided by the constitution that is existing for the study groups, the resolution, then bring topics to talk about. So for example, I was a rapporteur in the question 1, which talks about strategies and policies for the deployment of broadband in developing countries. So what you do is that you look at that topic, you study, you look at the situation back in your country, in your continent, find things that are disturbing, especially in that area. There's issues of regulations, policies of digital transformation, infrastructure. So you submit study proposals, what is being done in your country. And out of those discussions coming from the many countries of the ITU, we form recommendations on what shall guide the enhancing strategies and policies for deployment of broadband going forward, including recommendations to inform projects, resolutions for the next cycle, and other priorities. So that's just an example. And sorry, I keep on going back. So I said 2 study groups were approved for the last cycle. So we have 1 and 2. So study group 2 had these questions that you see on the screen. So why do we have this conversation even here? So in preparation to the WTDC that is coming, the 2025, members had to sit down and look at these study groups, if they're working for us or not working for us. So there was an online consultation, which was actually guided by the organ I've told you called TDAC, the Telecommunication Development Advisory Council. That is like a board of the development sector. A survey was done, and it was found that there's a lot of changes that need to be actually undertaken to help the study groups become more functional and serve us in the next 4 years. I will not go into the detail, but I just wanted to demonstrate that there is a process through which the world discusses to come up with the study groups. So things that came out of that consultation that the study groups are going to look at going forward, they must actually like be integrated to make them more viable, and were agreed generally across all the countries of ITU. The matters of how do we treat the issues of artificial intelligence, which were not there in the previous study groups? How do we treat issues of device affordability? Especially Africa is very passionate about this going forward. How do we treat issues of like how many study groups should we have? Are they true? So important here to note is that the study groups can be decided, they can be 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on what members want. And also there's an issue of cost component, time component, and all that. So members can decide, we don't want 2, we want 3, we want 4 study groups, or we want 1. So that's a discussion that's going to be agreed upon during the conference. And then the issues of, do we merge questions? Do we keep them? See, the last 2022 conference said we will keep 7. Going forward, how many do we want? So those are the issues that are actually going to be discussed. And I just displayed this a slide to show that discussions are ongoing and there's a whole sort of push and pull. And Africa has come up with a way they're looking at it. This is the Africa position. They are saying we need to merge these questions and make them 5, make them more tacit, and integrate the things that I've just shown you before. For instance, they're saying, let us use the merge question 1 and question 5 for study group 1 to form a question that takes care of broadband end-to-end, from broadband to issues of rural connectivity. So that's just an example. I won't go into details, but generally to finalize the whole discussion, this is my last slide, the discussions that are going to be held in Baku in terms of study groups is actually to agree how many study groups you want. There's a region called the, I think it is Europe, that wants 3 study groups. Africa is saying we keep 2. So those are the kinds of discussions that we're going to have. And then there's an issue of merging questions. For instance, Africa wants the issue of inclusive ICTs for persons with disabilities to become a standalone and a very strong questions, because we are most affected. 60% of persons with disabilities are living on the side of the developing countries. But the people who are on the other side who have less percentage are saying, no, remove that question, merge it with another question. Merging might cause it to disappear or not have a focus. So those are the kinds of arguments or discussions we're going to have. And maybe sometimes it leave it independent. So basically, I'm just trying to demonstrate that why is something like a study group important, or what your preference, and a matter that is very, very passionate to you, that is driving your economy, can be removed from that space, and it gets up to getting disappeared or not be given focus, and lack of focus for any matter that matters to us ends up to not having a project, an initiative, a priority, and you got forgotten. So I think I have demonstrated enough in terms of what a study group is and what discussions we're going to have in the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Emma, for that input. And thank you so much, Dominic, of course, for the comprehensive overview of the working group 1 deliverables. Back to you, Kivuva. I think our team, we are done. Back to you for the next steps.
Okay, thank you so much, Fred. And of course, we've had very, very good input from you, Fred, Emma, and Dominic. I was wondering, there was a section on working group 3, Fred?
Yes, it actually covered, I comprehensively covered the same.
Okay.
Chair working group 3 is not on the call, is engaged somewhere else, but it's about the resolutions. And actually, if you realized, half of my presentation was regarding the different resolutions.
Okay, then that's good. So I think then we go to the interactive session. So where we ask the members who are present here to ask questions. So of course we welcome questions to the CA team on ITU and WTDC. So that is our scope today's meeting. And of course there is one message from Jacob Nyongesa from Media Council of Kenya. He is asking, will you kindly provide more details? He says this is his first time hearing about these things. He's also provided his email. So probably, how can people get more details on this process you are working on? And also, if there is anybody with questions, you can raise your hand I can see David, there's David Ochiel. So just raise your hand, and also you can type your questions on the Q&A. So I'll take probably this question that has come up as we wait for others, and we also have others we want to ask from our end. So I'll allow you, David Ochiel, to go ahead. Yes, David, go ahead.
Thank you, Kibera, for this opportunity and also for the engagement with the partners from CA. So I'm David Ochiel from Tanda. My question is, I know there's a lot of resolutions that have been made in regards to all these processes. So my question is, how do we collectively own the entire resolutions that have been passed, and are there a way in which the CA has opened up opportunities for community networks such as Tanda to express an interest to working with CA to the realization of some of these resolutions?
Okay, thank you, David. So Fred, you've got the question: how do they own the process, and how people like community networks can participate in the process? So maybe you can combine that with the question that was asked by Joseph Nyongesa on how to get more information.
Dr. Emma, able to take the question from the last speaker?
Yes, again. Yes, again.
Please.
So I start, or you go first? I just go ahead. But do I go ahead?
Yes, please. You have the floor.
Okay. So thank you very much. That was, I think, Dan who asked, or Chair who asked that question. I wish to first thank you for that very important question, because ownership is what really drives even implementation. So in terms of owning, we have explained here that we are going ahead, and Fred well explained that we have gone to an advanced stage of these proposals. However, what we want to put in as a disclaimer is that the only reason why we are saying we as Africa have discussed and reached here as a consensus is it encourages a practice in the ITU to make discussions easy. However, if you look at the legal framework, the governing frameworks for the ITU, every country is sovereign, and every country has a right to speak on its own, to the extent that even if Africa has said we are going like this, and you are part of Africa, and you feel like there's something that did not go well with you, during the conference, you are not gagged to speak because Africa has said. Kenya is a sovereign country, and somebody can still raise an issue. So that is a disclaimer. So for this particular reason, my answer to the question then would be, I would encourage us, everybody on this call, please download at least the report. It is available by just Googling the report of the WTDC Kigali 2020-2022. If you have time, you could look at, even if it's just the resolutions, there are 90 resolutions in there. Read them through, especially for community networks. I would encourage you to look at resolution number 11 and resolution number 34 on bridging the digital divide and the rural connectivities. Look at that, and if there's something that is extremely serious missing, that is the best document. Of course, we have done some work. If there's something that you find that is very critical, you can get in touch with us, because now we're the representative who have been representing Kenya in the meetings, to state a matter that we can now discuss, and you can show you the changes that Africa has made. One of the options you would see that maybe somebody already thought of that, and the streamlining of the resolutions has already taken care of the matter you're talking about. However, if it is totally not there, and it is a very, very concrete submission that you're making, or something additional, we could still actually, until the conference approves a resolution, there's an opportunity of saying, could we also add a line or a word or something like that? So that is one avenue that is open for us. Though the process of discussing and all that has been closed for purposes of orderly preparation of documentation, because you see the conference is big, and it's going to happen just in like a month's time. So there's going to be publication translation in the 6 languages of the UN, and then communication, and all that is guided by working method and timelines. So that is the point for which they say deadlines for this, deadline for this. But at the discussion level, a matter can still be added. So, Ochel, I think there's still that avenue. However, if we don't catch it this time around, going forward, when WTDC is over, I think through KICTANet and Communication Authority of Kenya, we'll share the report of the WTDC and their grids, especially through the working groups. I can see a very good opportunity, like during the last study group where I was part of, we made submissions on community networks. So we can have engagements and see what are the areas of interest of the members, and members can make submissions, we discuss, then they can be presented through study groups to form discussions also going forward for the next cycle. I think, Chair, that is my submission. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Emma. Just again to add, apart from the documentation received from the Kigali Trade WTDC forum, you can actually access the ATU website. If you go to the ATU website, African Telecommunication Union website, you can see documentation like events that have happened in the past. The very last event happened in Abidjan. You can see the meeting report there. You can see the status of there are folders that are actually open to the public that you can check the status of the different discussions that are ongoing there. So that can actually give you, of course, more information on what is the focus for this WTDC and other regional documentation that you could actually refer to. Dominic Oko, you can give your comments.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to add on quickly, and thank you, David, for your question. Indeed, community networks and civil society in general, they have a place in the WTDC process as key stakeholders, because you're also the people on the ground. I see the opportunities first, I think, as Emma had raised, engaging through the study groups, like even maybe what we're going through, looking at even the resolutions. You find that based on your working, you may have experience, or you may have issues when you read through, then you could assist in maybe identifying areas to firm up the positions. I also see opportunities where you can plug in that, as Fred has also mentioned, after maybe the report is out, even as we identify projects, there could be opportunities now to share maybe case studies, pilot projects, and all that. Just having in mind also what I said, that at this level, still the regional initiatives, they are at high level. Issues of funding will come in, but it will give also an idea of the nature of projects that can now.
It's like we've lost Dominica.
Dominic, you can't hear you.
So, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, now you can hear.
At what point did you lose me?
Where you can actually provide input into the proposals for projects.
Okay. No, I was just saying that once the regional initiatives have been identified, the next step is now to identify the specific projects to be implemented. And that also is another opportunity where you can share your ideas on maybe the nature of projects that can plug into the regional initiatives. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Dominic and Dr. Emma. Kibuba, I think we have exhausted the questions that have been raised so far.
Yes, and there was also another question on the Q&A. One was how to get more material, and another one on how you track the impact of the study groups by Liki Omondi.
Regarding more information, I think we have directed listeners to the ATU website. And of course, if you want to learn about the previous cycle of WTDC, On the chat, I think you have provided the final report of the 2022 WTDC. Similarly, I think engage more on the ITU website. Very proactive. It is very interactive. You can find all the documentation, even the list of the resolutions in their current form. But if there is any information that you won't be able, or for some reason you're not able to access, you can always reach to us, as Dominic and Dr. Emma indicated. I think the other question was regarding.
So the other question was how you will measure impact of the working groups. How you're able to track or measure impact of the groups.
The groups. Actually, the study groups normally give deliverables. As Dr. Emma indicated, each study group has key result areas. They have deliverables. So what they normally do is develop either best practice on a subject matter of study. They can do a recommendation. If you realize, for example, when we are developing our regulatory frameworks, be it review regulations, develop standards, develop guidelines, we normally refer to best practice or other recommendations that have been given by ITU. Look at it as sort of a standardization environment. You look at what is the best practice. How do you approach an issue? For example, how do you identify, for example, an access gap? How do you develop a broadband strategy? Some of those best recommendations have actually been given. There's always an evaluation process by PDT on whether the specific study group in a study period actually met their objective. Theirs is limited to delivering the deliverables, but the actual implementation of their recommendations happens in countries. For example, if we do a resolution to commit to develop a harmonized framework within the East African region, so it's up to the East African community membership to actually develop that. So that is the aspect. So the study groups are just the evaluation is limited to whether they actually delivered on the key result areas that was expected, but the actual implementation and impact happens in the countries that are actually supposed to implement this. I don't know whether my colleagues have something to add, Dominic and Emma.
Yeah, as they come on, of course, we also had some questions. So we also encourage members to continue raising their hands or asking the question through the Q&A feature on the Zoom platform. So of course we've seen new terminologies, especially if we are fresh and new to the ITU process and the WTDC process. And we've also seen the critical role that the regulator CA is doing in representing us at the global stage. And of course, we are now becoming more aware. So for example, there's these processes you have talked about and the inputs that came. So one question is, did other stakeholders apart from the regulator stakeholders give input during the Africa Preparatory Meeting? Did you get any feedback from either community or any other members apart from the key members that the regulators always work with? And secondly, I've seen like there's that working group, you're calling it D, that we were saying that people can participate in. How do they contribute? Where do they start? Is there a newcomer track where the new voices come on board? And also, how does the community get accredited, or do they even need accreditation from the regulator to participate? And if so, what is the process? So probably you can also capture that as you answer the other question. Thanks, Fred.
Okay, we can finish with the other question on measuring the impact of study groups, Dr. Emma.
Yes, thank you very much, Fred, and thank you, Kivuva, and the person who has raised the question. Yes, Fred, I think you had adequately responded to the issue of monitoring. So one of the things that maybe members also need to be made aware of is that the ITU, as Fred had presented, the three sectors, the radio sector, the standards, and the development sector, they act as the secretariat for membership. So the development sector, the people who ITU has hired that sit in Geneva, and then some are actually even in the what you're calling regional offices. We have an office in Ethiopia, another one in Zambia, I think. They are actually there to support, and one of the tasks they do is track each and every place where the union is putting their investment. So the study groups are formed with the direction of the membership. They have what we call every establishment has a working method, and part of that working method constitutes of how they'll work and how the impact will be measured. So the secretariat comes up with strategies of measuring if they're achieving the objective for which they were. And part of the reporting to the conference is going to be that. For instance, you'll see reports like this study group of this, wherever these countries participated, this number of submissions in terms of study proposals were made. These were the recommendations. These workshops were formed within. These were the outputs, like the toolkits and all these supports were given, whatever, all these things. So it is very well tracked, and it is recorded. And if you look at the ITU portals, that information is there. So that is well done. If I could just give a bit of input to the other question that was about if other people really participated in this process. Yes, we had also mentioned earlier, other than members, other than the member states, ITU has more than 1,000 sector members. And for the ones that you know and who are also locally based in Nairobi, who you know and participate in most of the things, GSMA is one of them, and GSMA has made several amendments, and they've streamlined a lot of resolutions there. GSOA, the one for satellite, is a sector member, and they've also made a lot of submissions in terms of issues to do with satellite. Other member academia, like even the universities, are there and they participated. And actually, Fred, I had confused. It is TESPOC who is a sector member, not KICTANet. It's TESPOC. They are members, and they have attended the regional preparatory meeting, like the one that was held in April. TESPOC was there. So yes, indeed. But the only thing is that because it is ITU is a membership-based, just like UN, you cannot walk into a meeting and start making contributions. So you must be a member for you to actually be able to sit in and make a submission, because they will record you under what category are you? Are you a member state? Are you a sector member? Are you academia? So it is guided and it's regulated for purposes of how all institutions work, like KICTANet. You must be a member for you to come and do something there. However, because you're a Kenyan, you can still speak through the regulator, the ministry, or any other person who is a member there, and your ideas get actually, and that's why we're having sessions of this, and we should have more as we go on to implement the next cycle. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Dr. Emma, for that contribution. Kivuva, essentially, this is the start of collaboration with the sector membership for KICTANet and others. And as Dr. Emma indicated, the CA as the government representative in ITU then represents the aspirations and the opinion of all members within our, rather, all people within our country. So we will have more of these sessions to get your feedback, and I think that's something we'll learn. But as Dr. Emma indicated, quite a number of memberships from private sector are part of the process, and they have been contributing. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, CA team. I can see we don't have any other further questions on the group. And I think we've been able to realize part of the objectives of this meeting, which was to understand the priorities for Kenya and the region on the WTDC-25 themes, and also to foster inclusive and multi-stakeholder participation and engagement, so that we hear what the regulator and the members, the ITU members are doing. And also, of course, the expected outcomes, I think, was the building awareness on the development priorities that you have put for us. I think those came very clearly from the presentations. and also strengthening the stakeholder engagement between the regulator and the entire Kenyan population. So I think we've been able to achieve most of the objectives of this meeting. There's a poll that has been shared so that we can see if how we can be able to take this communication further from the presentations. And also, of course, on the follow-up actions, we'll be able to come up with a report of this meeting and also share the resources that C has presented to the people who have participated, and also see if we can get more different groupings to also be part of the sector members of ITU, because many different stakeholders are represented on this call. We had more than 100 participants, participants who had shown interest to participate, and some were coming in and out. But at the top of the hour, we had around 65 participants at one time, but but the unique ones are more than 100. And then, of course, we'll want to see how we can be able to take this further even after the WTDC meeting, 25th meeting in Baku, with the 2025 meeting in Baku. We want to see how we can be able to take this further with the community. So with that, we really thank all the community members who have participated, stakeholders from civil society, academia, and business community, and also government and the regulator. We're really grateful for you keeping preparing those comprehensive presentations for the community, and we will see you next time. And thank you so much on behalf of KICTANet, and wishing you a great evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.